The morning sun rose over New Eden Colony, casting golden light across the wheat fields that stretched to the horizon. Sarah Martinez walked through the crops with her daughter Emma, checking the growth sensors that monitored the planet's first successful harvest. The 10-year-old girl ran between the rows, laughing as she chased the small flying creatures that helped pollinate the earth plants. "Mom, when will Grandpa visit again?" Emma asked, picking up one of the sensor devices to examine it closely. "Soon, sweetheart. He's bringing more families from Earth next month," Sarah replied, smiling as she watched her daughter's curiosity. This was exactly why they had come to the Outer Rim colonies. Life here was simple, peaceful, and full of wonder. New Eden was one of 12 human colonies in this sector of space, far from the busy core worlds near Earth. The colonists had chosen this distant region because they wanted to live differently from their ancestors. No more wars, no more violence, just families building new lives among the stars. Commander Jake Chen stood in the small defense station above the colony, looking through the large windows at the peaceful settlement below. His job was to protect these worlds. But in the 15 years since the colonies were established, he had never fired a weapon in anger. The biggest problems he dealt with were lost cargo ships and the occasional equipment breakdown. "Another quiet day," said Lieutenant Ross, joining Chen at the window. "The Zentari traders should arrive tomorrow with those new farming machines." Chen nodded. The Zentari were one of several alien species that traded peacefully with the human colonies. They brought advanced technology in exchange for human art, music, and food. It was exactly the kind of relationship the colonists had hoped to build with their alien neighbors. "Sir, we're getting some unusual readings on the long-range scanners," reported Technician Williams from his station. "Several ships just entered the system, but they're not following normal approach patterns." Chen walked over to look at the scanner display. 6 large vessels had appeared at the edge of the system, but they weren't heading toward the trading station or sending the usual identification signals. "Try to contact them," Chen ordered. "They might just be lost." Williams worked at his communications panel for several minutes before shaking his head. "No response, sir. They're not answering on any frequency." The unknown ships continued moving through the system, but instead of approaching New Eden, they seemed to be scanning everything. Their sensors swept across the planet, the orbital stations, and the small defense platforms that protected the colony. On the planet below, life continued normally. Children attended school in the morning, learning about Earth history and the science that made their new world possible. Adults worked in the fields, the factories, and the research stations that studied how to make the planet more like Earth. Families gathered for meals, sharing stories and making plans for the future. Dr. Marcus Webb worked in his laboratory on Haven's Rest, another colony in the same system. He was studying how Earth plants adapted to alien soil, hoping to help other colonies grow better crops. His research team included both humans and aliens, working together to solve problems that would help everyone. "The protein levels in these samples are amazing," said Dr. Kess, a Zentari scientist who had joined the research project. "Your Earth plants are much stronger than we expected." Webb smiled as he looked at the data on his screen. "That's what makes this work so rewarding. We're not just growing food. We're proving that different species can work together to build something better." Back on the defense station, Chen was growing more worried about the unknown ships. They had been scanning the system for hours without identifying themselves or explaining their purpose. "Sir, I'm picking up similar readings from other colonies," Williams reported. "It looks like unknown ships are watching all of our settlements in this sector." Chen felt a cold fear in his stomach. In all his years protecting the colonies, he had never seen anything like this. The unknown ships were clearly studying the human settlements, but for what purpose? He activated the communication system that connected all the colonies in the sector. "This is Commander Chen to all colony defense stations. We have unknown vessels conducting unauthorized scans of our systems. Maintain alert status and report any hostile actions immediately." Responses came back from 11 other colonies, all reporting the same thing. Unknown ships were watching them, scanning their defenses and studying their settlements. None of the alien vessels responded to communication attempts. Should we contact Earth Command? Lieutenant Ross asked. Chen considered this carefully. Earth Command was months away, even by the fastest ship. The core worlds had their own problems to worry about, and the outer colonies had been established specifically to be independent and self-sufficient. Not yet, Chen decided. They might just be explorers or traders we haven't met before. Let's give them time to make contact properly. The unknown ships continued their surveillance for 2 more days. They mapped every human settlement, counted every defense platform, and recorded the movements of every ship. The colonists tried to maintain normal routines, but everyone could feel the tension growing. On New Eden, Sarah Martinez tucked Emma into bed and tried to hide her worry. "Mom, why do the grown-ups seem scared?" the little girl asked. "We're not scared, sweetheart, we're just being careful. There are some new visitors in space, and we want to make sure they're friendly before we meet them." Emma nodded sleepily. "Like when we first met the Kthari. They seemed scary at first, but then they became our friends." "Exactly like that," Sarah said, kissing her daughter's forehead. She hoped it would be that simple. But deep in space, aboard the largest of the unknown ships, Admiral Thexkar of the Kthari Dominion was making very different plans. He studied the sensor readings his fleet had gathered, noting how weak the human defenses were, how scattered their settlements, how defenseless their people. "These humans are even weaker than our intelligence reports suggested," he told his officers. "They have no significant military presence, no orbital fortresses, no defensive fleets. Their colonies are ripe for conquest." The Kthari had been expanding their empire for centuries, taking worlds and enslaving species that couldn't defend themselves. They had observed the human colonies from a distance, watching how the humans responded to small provocations with words instead of weapons. "When do we begin the assault?" asked General Vextor, eager for battle. "Soon," Admiral Thexkar replied, looking at the peaceful human settlements on his tactical display. "Let them enjoy their false peace a little longer. Tomorrow, they will learn what happens to weak species who dare to settle in Kthari space." New Eden. The night passed quietly. Families slept peacefully in their homes, dreaming of the bright future they were building among the stars. Children dreamed of becoming explorers and scientists. Parents dreamed of watching their children grow up in a world without war. None of them knew that their peaceful existence was about to end. None of them suspected that their greatest tragedy would soon awaken something in humanity that the galaxy had never seen before. The dragons were still sleeping, but not for much longer. The attack began at dawn across 12 human worlds simultaneously. On New Eden, Sarah Martinez was making breakfast when the first explosions shook the ground. The kitchen windows shattered, and dishes crashed to the floor as the entire house trembled. Outside, she could see bright flashes of light in the sky as alien warships opened fire on the peaceful colony. "Emma!" Sarah screamed, running to her daughter's room. The 10-year-old was already awake, tears streaming down her face as the sounds of destruction grew louder. Commander Chen watched in horror from the defense station as Kthari warships emerged from hyperspace directly above New Eden. There were dozens of them, their massive hulls bristling with weapons that immediately began firing on the defenseless colony below. "All defense platforms, return fire," Chen ordered, but even as he spoke, he knew it was hopeless. The human defense platforms had been designed to stop pirates and small raiders, not a full military assault by an advanced alien fleet. The first defense platform exploded within seconds, its weak shields no match for Kthari plasma cannons. The second platform lasted only slightly longer before it too was vaporized by concentrated enemy fire. "Sir, we're getting distress calls from all colonies in the sector," Technician Williams reported, his voice shaking with fear. "They're all under attack. The enemy fleet is huge." Lieutenant Ross tried desperately to coordinate a defense, but it was like trying to stop an avalanche with a handful of pebbles. The few human patrol ships in the system were destroyed before they could even reach the enemy fleet. On the planet's surface, the Kthari bombardment was merciless and precise. They targeted not just military installations, but schools, hospitals, farms, and residential areas. Families who had never hurt anyone, who had spent years building peaceful lives, died in the first few minutes of the attack. The elementary school where Emma Martinez attended classes took a direct hit. The building simply disappeared in a ball of fire, along with 200 children and their teachers. The medical center where Dr. Sarah Kim had spent 10 years helping colonists was reduced to rubble. The community center where families gathered for celebrations became a smoking crater. At Haven's Rest Colony, Dr. Marcus Webb was in his laboratory when the Kthari ships appeared in orbit. He immediately activated the emergency communication system, trying to send a warning to other human settlements. "This is Dr. Webb at Haven's Rest Research Station," he broadcast on all frequencies. "We are under attack by unknown alien forces. They are targeting civilian populations. Repeat, they are killing civilians without warning." Kthari ground forces began landing even as their ships continued the orbital bombardment. These were not occupation troops meant to take prisoners. They were extermination forces, equipped with weapons designed to kill everything that moved. Webb continued his desperate transmission as enemy soldiers approached his laboratory. "They're not trying to conquer us. They're trying to wipe us out. Completely, our colonies are defenseless. We need help. The laboratory door exploded inward. Kthari soldiers poured through the opening, their alien faces showing no emotion as they raised their weapons. Webb had just enough time to send one final message before they opened fire. They didn't just attack our colonies. They killed our children while they slept. On New Eden, Sarah Martinez held her daughter Emma as they hid in their basement. The house above them was burning, and they could hear alien voices speaking in harsh, clicking sounds. Sarah covered Emma's mouth to keep her quiet, but she could see the terror in her child's eyes. Heavy footsteps moved through the house above them. The Kthari soldiers were searching every building, every room, every hiding place. They had orders to leave no humans alive. The basement door was torn off its hinges. 3 Kthari soldiers descended the stairs, their reptilian eyes scanning the darkness with thermal vision. Sarah pulled Emma closer, but she knew it was hopeless. The aliens raised their weapons. Emma looked up at her mother one last time and whispered, "I love you, Mommy." The weapons fired. Commander Chen watched from his failing command center as New Eden died below him. The colony that had taken 15 years to build was being destroyed in less than an hour. Thousands of innocent people were being murdered simply because they were human. "Sir, all surface installations have gone silent," Williams reported, tears running down his face. "I'm not picking up any life signs from the major population centers." Chen activated the long-range communications array, the most powerful transmitter the colony possessed. If he was going to die here, he would make sure the rest of humanity knew what had happened. "This is Commander Chen of the New Eden Defense Force to any human vessel or station. We are under attack by alien forces identifying themselves as the Kthari Dominion. They have attacked all 12 colonies in this sector without warning or provocation. They are not seeking conquest. They are committing genocide." The command center shook as Kthari fighters strafed the building. Chen could see enemy ground forces surrounding the station, preparing for their final assault. "The enemy shows no interest in prisoners or negotiation. They are killing everyone, including children. New Eden Colony is lost. Haven's Rest is lost. All colonies in this sector are lost. Someone must tell Earth what happened here. Someone must make them pay for this." The Kthari soldiers reached the command center. Chen drew his sidearm, knowing it would do little good against their advanced armor. Williams and Ross did the same. "For the colonies," Chen said quietly. "For the colonies," they replied. The final battle was brief and hopeless. Across the sector, similar scenes played out on 11 other worlds. The colony on Bright Water, where 3,000 farmers had grown food to feed other settlements. The research station on Cold Harbor, where scientists had been working to cure diseases that affected both humans and aliens. The trading post, on Far Shore, where human merchants had built friendships with dozens of alien species, all destroyed, all dead, all silent. Admiral Thexkar watched the destruction from his flagship's command bridge, satisfied with his force's efficiency. The human colonies had been eliminated in less than 6 hours, with minimal Kthari casualties. "Begin salvage operations," he ordered. "Strip anything of value from these worlds, then establish mining bases. The humans' terraforming work will make resource extraction much easier. What about the distress signals they sent? Asked General Vextor. Thexkar dismissed the concern with a wave of his clawed hand. By the time any human reinforcements arrive, we will control this entire sector. Let them come. We will destroy them just as easily as we destroyed these pathetic colonies. He activated the Kthari military communication network, broadcasting his victory across the Dominion. The human expansion has been stopped. These weak creatures thought they could settle in Kthari space without consequences. Today they learned the price of their arrogance. The broadcast was picked up by other species throughout the galaxy, many of whom had been watching the human expansion with interest. The message was clear. Humans were weak, defenseless, and easy to destroy. But the Kthari had made one critical error. They had focused so intently on destroying the colonies that they had paid little attention to the communications the humans had sent before dying. Dr. Webb's final transmission had been picked up by a quantum relay station at the edge of human space. Commander Chen's desperate warning had been recorded by an automated monitoring post. The voices of the dying colonies had reached human space, carrying with them the details of what had happened in the outer rim. The dragons were about to wake up. And when they did, the galaxy would learn that there are worse things than human weakness. There is human vengeance. The first transmission reached Earth Command at 0347 hours, Terran Standard Time. Admiral Elena Vasquez was pulled from sleep by her aide, Lieutenant Commander Torres, who stood beside her bed with a face pale as death. "Admiral, you need to see this immediately," Torres said, handing her a datapad with shaking hands. Vasquez sat up and activated the device. Dr. Webb's final transmission played, his voice calm and professional even as death approached. "They didn't just attack our colonies. They killed our children while they slept." The Admiral's blood went cold. She had served in the Human Defense Force for 35 years, fighting pirates and defending trade routes. She had seen combat, loss, and tragedy, but nothing had prepared her for this. "How many colonies?" she asked quietly. "All 12 Outer Rim settlements, ma'am. No survivors detected. Complete communication blackout from the entire sector." Vasquez stood and began dressing quickly. "Alert all department heads. Emergency session. In the war room in 30 minutes. And wake up President Morrison." As she walked through the corridors of Earth Command, Vasquez could see the news spreading. Staff members whispered in small groups, their faces showing the same shock and disbelief she felt. How could this have happened? The Outer Rim colonies had been peaceful for decades. The war room filled quickly with Earth's most senior military officers and government officials. President Morrison arrived still wearing civilian clothes, his usually perfect appearance disheveled from sleep. "What exactly are we dealing with?" the president asked as he took his seat at the head of the long table. General Harrison, head of military intelligence, activated the main display. Images from the Outer Rim appeared showing the devastation left behind by the Kthari attack. Where once there had been thriving settlements, now only smoking ruins remained. The attackers identify themselves as the Kthari Dominion, Harrison reported. "Our files show limited contact with this species over the past 50 years. They appear to be an expansionist empire with significant military capabilities. Casualties?" President Morrison asked, his voice barely above a whisper. "Total," Admiral Vasquez replied. 2.3 million civilians confirmed dead. No military casualties because there wasn't enough military presence to fight back. The room fell, completely silent. Several officers stared at their hands, unable to process the magnitude of the loss. These weren't soldiers who had died in battle. They were families who had gone to sleep in their beds and never woken up. Secretary of State Williams spoke first. "We should attempt diplomatic contact. Find out what they want, see if we can negotiate a settlement." Admiral Vasquez turned to look at him with eyes that had turned to ice. "They murdered children in their schools, Mr. Secretary. What exactly would you like to negotiate?" Dr. Sarah Chen, the president's science advisor, pulled up additional data on her tablet. "I've been reviewing the colony records. New Eden alone had over 800 children under the age of 15. Haven's Rest had 3 schools with a total enrollment of 600 students." She paused, her voice breaking slightly. The attack happened during morning hours on most worlds. The children were in class when the bombardment began. President Morrison closed his eyes for a long moment. When he opened them again, something fundamental had changed in his expression. The politician was gone, replaced by something much more dangerous. "Admiral Vasquez," he said quietly, "I'm invoking Protocol 7. A shocked murmur ran through the room. Protocol 7 hadn't been activated in over a century. It represented humanity's complete transition from peacekeeping to total war. "Mr. President," Secretary Williams protested, "perhaps we should consider other options first. Protocol 7 gives the military unprecedented authority." "They killed our children," the president replied, his voice carrying a cold finality that silenced all debate. "There are no other options." Admiral Vasquez stood and faced the room. "As of this moment, the Human Defense Force is authorized to use any and all means necessary to locate and destroy the forces responsible for the colonial massacres. All fleet reserves are activated. All military production facilities are converted to wartime operations. All research and development programs are redirected to military applications." She turned to General Harrison. "I want everything we know about the Kthari within 24 hours. Ship capabilities, home systems, military, doctrine, weaknesses, everything." "Yes, ma'am. Our intelligence networks are already working on it. And I want our best tactical minds working on response options, not defensive strategies, offensive ones." The meeting continued for hours as Earth's leadership planned humanity's response to the unprovoked attack. But the real awakening was happening throughout human space as news of the massacres spread. On Mars, the massive shipyards that built exploration vessels and cargo haulers received new orders. The production lines that had been assembling peaceful ships for colonization were retooled overnight to build instruments of war. The asteroid mining stations that provided raw materials for human expansion suddenly found their entire output redirected to military purposes. Metals that had been used to build schools and hospitals now went to construct warships and weapons. On Luna, the advanced research facilities that had been working on terraforming technology and medical breakthroughs received new assignments. Their brilliant scientists were told to focus their considerable intellect on a single question: how do we make the enemy pay? Dr. Jennifer Walsh had spent 15 years developing new propulsion systems for exploration ships. Now she stood in her laboratory, staring at classified designs that had been theoretical exercises just days before. "The Nemesis-class dreadnought project?" her assistant asked, looking at the massive ship blueprints on the display. "Not theoretical anymore," Walsh replied grimly. "Full development authorization. They want the first hull completed in 6 months. The Nemesis-class ships were monsters, designed to survive anything the enemy could throw at them and respond with overwhelming firepower. Each vessel carried enough weapons to destroy a planet's surface and enough armor to absorb punishment that would vaporize lesser ships. "How many are they ordering?" the assistant asked. 50 for the first wave, more if needed." Similar conversations were happening in research facilities throughout human space. The peaceful species that had built colonies among the stars was revealing another side of itself, one that had been hidden for generations. In the diplomatic Corps, Ambassador Richardson received new orders from Earth Command. His instructions were simple and direct. Inform all allied species that humanity is going to war. Any species that assists or harbors the Kthari will be considered enemies. Any species that provides intelligence or support will be remembered as friends. The message sent to the Kthari Dominion was even more direct. It was transmitted on all frequencies in multiple languages and repeated every hour. "To the Kthari Dominion, you have 72 hours to withdraw all forces from former human territory and surrender those responsible for the colonial massacres. This is not a negotiation. This is a statement of fact. You will comply, or you will be made to comply." Admiral Thexkar received the transmission aboard his flagship, still in orbit above the destroyed colony of New Eden. He read it once, then burst into harsh, clicking laughter that his bridge crew quickly joined. "The weak humans think to threaten us," he said, sharing the message with his officers. They demand we surrender after we have proven their helplessness. Should we respond, Admiral? Asked his communications officer. Yes, Thexkar replied, still amused. Tell them that the Kthari Dominion does not negotiate with inferior species. If they wish to discuss terms of surrender, they may approach our forces with appropriate respect. He deactivated the communication system and returned, his attention to the salvage operations. The humans had been stripped of their outer colonies in a single day. If they were foolish enough to send more forces, those too would be easily destroyed. But in human space, something was stirring that the Kthari had never encountered before. It wasn't just anger or desire for revenge. It was something much more dangerous. Human determination combined with human intelligence focused on a single goal. The dragons were awakening, and they were very, very angry. 6 months later, the Titan shipyards above Earth had been transformed into something the galaxy had never seen before. Admiral Vasquez stood on the observation deck of the massive construction facility, watching as the first Nemesis-class dreadnought neared completion. The ship was enormous, over 3 kilometers long and bristling with weapons that could crack a moon in half. The Terra's Vengeance will be ready for launch in 2 days, reported Chief Engineer Martinez. All weapon systems, tested and operational. All defense systems exceed projected capabilities. And the rest of the fleet? Vasquez asked. 49 more Nemesis-class ships in various stages of construction. The first wave of 20 will be ready within the month. Vasquez nodded, watching the construction robots put finishing touches on the massive warship. This was what humanity looked like when it stopped building for peace and started building for war. Throughout human space, the greatest mobilization in the species' history continued. Every world, every station, every outpost had been transformed by the single purpose of preparing for war against the Kthari. The asteroid mining stations now operated around the clock, their massive extractors pulling raw materials from space rocks at a rate that dwarfed previous production. The materials didn't go to building new colonies or expanding peaceful settlements. Everything went to the war effort. Dr. Jennifer Walsh worked 18-hour days in her expanded laboratory, now leading a team of 2,000 scientists and engineers. The theoretical weapons that had existed only on paper 6 months ago were now reality. The quantum torpedo tests exceeded expectations, her lead weapons specialist reported. The warhead can penetrate any known shield technology and deliver a concentrated antimatter explosion equivalent to a small star. Production rate? Walsh asked. We can manufacture 500 per month with current facilities. More if we expand. The manufacturing stations. Expand them. I want 2,000 torpedoes ready for the first offensive. Similar conversations were happening in secret facilities throughout human territory. The peaceful species that had spent centuries exploring the stars was revealing weapons technology that made other galactic powers nervous. General Harrison stood in the intelligence center on Luna, surrounded by displays showing everything humanity had learned about the Kthari Dominion. The information had come from sources the Kthari never suspected existed. Our deep cover agents have identified 17 major Kthari worlds, he reported to Admiral Vasquez during their daily briefing. Primary military installations, shipyard locations, and command centers. Defensive capabilities. Significant but conventional. The Kthari have never faced an enemy with our technological capabilities. Their shield frequencies, weapon types, and tactical doctrine are all in our databases. Vasquez studied the tactical displays showing Kthari territory. They've had 6 months to prepare for our response. What are they expecting? Based on intercepted communications, they believe we'll send a small retaliatory force that they can easily defeat. Their intelligence suggests humans prefer diplomatic solutions and will likely negotiate after suffering minor losses. They still don't understand what they've awakened, Vasquez said quietly. The truth was that the Kthari had made a fundamental error in their assessment of humanity. They had observed human colonies and seen only peaceful farmers and researchers. They had noted the minimal military presence and concluded that humans were weak. What they had failed to understand was that human colonies were not military bases. They were families. And humanity's response to threats against their families was something no alien species had ever witnessed. On Mars, the recruitment centers could barely handle the flood of volunteers. Young people who had planned to be teachers, doctors, and engineers instead lined up to join the Human Defense Force. Parents who had lost children in the colonial massacres demanded to be allowed to serve, regardless of age or physical condition. Captain Sarah Kim had been a medical doctor on the New Horizon colony before the attack. She had survived only because she had been visiting Earth when the Kthari struck. Now she stood in Admiral Vasquez's office, wearing the uniform of a naval intelligence officer. "I want to be part of the strike force," she said directly. "My daughter died on New Horizon. My husband died trying to protect her. I need to be there when we make them pay." Vasquez looked at the woman's file. Brilliant medical background, no military experience, but her psychological evaluations showed the kind of focused determination that won wars. "You'll be assigned to the medical division of Battlefleet Retribution," Vasquez decided. "But understand, Captain Kim, this won't bring your family back." "No," Kim replied with ice-cold certainty. "But it will ensure no other human families suffer the same fate." The conversation was repeated thousands of times throughout human space. The colonial massacres had created something the galaxy had never seen. An entire species united by grief and driven by a single purpose. The alien intelligence networks that monitored human space began sending increasingly worried reports to their home governments. The species that had been dismissed as weak pacifists was mobilizing for total war with a speed and efficiency that terrified experienced military observers. The Zentari trade representative on Earth requested an urgent meeting with President Morrison. Ambassador Keltar had worked with humans for decades and considered himself an expert on human behavior. "Mr. President," he said carefully, "my government is concerned about the scale of your military preparations. The Kthari attack was terrible, but perhaps a more measured response would be appropriate." Morrison looked at the alien diplomat with eyes that had grown cold over the past months. "Ambassador, the Kthari murdered 2.3 million human civilians, including over 200,000 children. What would you consider an appropriate response? Diplomatic pressure, economic sanctions, perhaps limited military action against their border territories," Keltar suggested. "They killed children in their sleep," Morrison replied quietly. "There will be no diplomatic pressure. There will be no limited action. There will be consequences." The Zentari ambassador left the meeting deeply disturbed. He had known humans for decades, worked with them, considered them friends. But the species he had dealt with after the colonial massacres was something entirely different. In Kthari space, Admiral Thexkar was growing increasingly frustrated with the human response. 6 months had passed since his successful attack, and instead of the expected surrender or negotiation, the humans had gone completely silent. "Have we detected any human military movements?" he asked his intelligence officer. "Negative, Admiral. Long-range sensors show increased industrial activity in human space, but no significant fleet movements toward our territory. They're probably building up courage for a diplomatic approach," Thexkar decided. "Continue monitoring. When they finally arrive to surrender, we'll be ready to dictate terms." But the Kthari monitoring posts at the edge of their territory were about to detect something that would change their understanding of warfare forever. The first Nemesis-class dreadnoughts were completing their final preparations. Battlefleet Retribution was assembling in secret, far from alien observation, and humanity was about to teach the galaxy what happened when you threatened their young. The dragons were no longer stirring. They were wide awake, and they were coming. The Kthari detection grid registered the first human ships exactly 72 hours and 37 minutes after the ultimatum expired. Admiral Thexkar was reviewing salvage reports from the destroyed colonies when his sensor officer interrupted with urgent news. "Admiral, we have multiple hyperspace signatures emerging at grid coordinates 77 Mark IV. The signatures are massive, sir, much larger than anything in our database." Thexkar activated his command display and felt his blood chill. 20 enormous human warships had appeared at the edge of Kthari space, each one larger than his flagship. But it wasn't their size that worried him most. It was their formation. These ships weren't approaching like desperate colonists seeking negotiation. They moved with the precise coordination of an experienced battle fleet, their weapons all ready, charged and their shields at maximum power.
How did they get so close without detection? Thexakar demanded. Unknown, sir. Our long-range sensors show no indication of how they approached our territory undetected. The truth was that the human ships had used stealth technology that made
them invisible to Kthari sensors until they chose to reveal themselves. Dr. Walsh's team had spent months studying captured Kthari sensor equipment, learning exactly how to avoid detection. Admiral Vasquez stood on the bridge of the Terra's Vengeance, watching the Kthari home system grow larger on the main display. Behind her, the other 19 ships of Battle Fleet Retribution moved in, perfect formation, their crews ready for the battle they had trained for. "Admiral, we're receiving a transmission from the Kthari flagship," reported Communications Officer Torres. "Put it through." Admiral Thexkar's reptilian face appeared on the main screen, his expression showing the arrogance that had led to the colonial massacres. "Human vessels, you are trespassing in Kthari space. Withdraw immediately or face destruction." Vasquez studied the alien commander for a long moment before responding. "Admiral Thexkar of the Kthari Dominion, you are responsible for the murder of 2.3 million human civilians. Surrender your forces and prepare to face justice." Thexkar laughed, the harsh clicking sound echoing through the communication channel. "You think 20 ships can threaten the entire Kthari fleet? We have over 300 vessels in this system alone." "Yes," Vasquez replied simply. "I do." The communication ended, and Admiral Vasquez turned to her tactical officer. "All ships, this is Admiral Vasquez. The enemy has refused to surrender. They chose to laugh at our demand for justice. Show them what happens when you murder human children." The Battle of Kthari Prime began with a demonstration of weapons technology that rewrote galactic understanding of warfare. The Terra's Vengeance fired the first quantum torpedo, the new weapon traveling at near-light speed toward the largest Kthari battleship. The enemy vessel's shields flared briefly, then collapsed entirely as the antimatter warhead detonated with the force of a small star. The Kthari flagship simply ceased to exist. "Impossible," Thexkar whispered from his backup command ship, watching his most powerful vessel vanish in a ball of fire. "No weapon should be able to penetrate our shields like that." But the human assault had only just begun. The 20 Nemesis-class dreadnoughts spread out across the system, each one targeting multiple enemy vessels with weapons that the Kthari had never imagined. The human ships moved with a grace that seemed impossible for vessels of their size. Advanced maneuvering systems allowed them to dodge enemy fire, while maintaining perfect firing solutions on their targets. Every shot was calculated, every movement precise. Captain Sarah Kim watched from the medical bay as the Terra's Vengeance destroyed ship after ship. Each enemy vessel that died brought her closer to justice for her murdered family. "Kthari forces are attempting to regroup," reported the tactical officer. "They're falling back to the inner system defenses. Pursue and engage," Admiral Vasquez ordered. "No enemy vessel leaves this system." What followed was not so much a battle as a methodical extermination. The human ships hunted down every Kthari vessel in the system, destroying them with weapons that made resistance impossible. Orbital defense platforms that protected Kthari Prime were obliterated by concentrated fire from multiple dreadnoughts. The planetary shields that had protected the world for centuries collapsed under the assault of quantum torpedoes. Admiral Thexkar, aboard his final remaining command ship, sent a desperate transmission to Admiral Vasquez. "We surrender. Stop the attack. We are willing to negotiate." The response came not from Vasquez but from President Morrison himself, his image appearing on screens throughout the Kthari fleet. "You targeted our children," the human leader said with cold finality. "You murdered families in their sleep. You thought we were weak because we preferred peace. Now you learn the difference between choosing peace and being incapable of war." "Please," Thexkar begged. "We can discuss terms, reparations, territorial agreements." "There are no terms," Morrison replied. "There is only justice." The Terra's Vengeance fired its final quantum torpedo. Admiral Thexkar's ship joined the rest of his fleet in oblivion, but the Battle of Kthari Prime was only the beginning. Over the following months, Battlefleet Retribution moved through Kthari space like an unstoppable force of nature. Every military installation was destroyed, every warship was hunted down and eliminated. Every world that had supported the colonial massacres faced the consequences. The human approach to warfare proved utterly alien to galactic understanding. Where most species fought for territory or resources, humans fought with the methodical precision of exterminators. They didn't seek to conquer Kthari space. They sought to ensure the Kthari could never threaten anyone again. Dr. Walsh's quantum torpedoes cracked the shields of planets that had thought themselves invulnerable. The Nemesis-class dreadnoughts proved capable of defeating entire enemy fleets single-handedly. Human intelligence networks provided targeting data with terrifying accuracy. The final battle of the war took place in the Kthari home system, where the last remnants of their government had gathered to make a final stand. The human fleet arrived to find a dozen worlds defended by orbital fortresses and the largest space stations in Kthari history. It took the humans 6 hours to destroy everything. When the shooting stopped, Kthari civilization had been reduced to scattered civilian populations on agricultural worlds, their military completely eliminated, their government dissolved, their ability to wage war permanently destroyed. Admiral Vasquez stood on the bridge of the Terra's Vengeance, looking at the debris field that had once been the Kthari capital fleet. The war was over. Justice had been delivered. Admiral, Communications Officer Torres reported, "We're receiving surrender requests from 47 Kthari civilian governments." "Accept their surrenders," Vasquez ordered. "Civilian populations will be protected under human oversight. All former military personnel will face war crimes tribunals." The news of humanity's victory spread throughout the galaxy faster than light-speed communication. The species that had been dismissed as weak pacifists had completely destroyed a major galactic power in less than a year. Other alien governments sent urgent diplomatic messages to Earth, each one carefully worded to avoid any suggestion of threat toward human interests. The galaxy had learned a lesson that would be remembered for centuries. On the rebuilt world of New Eden, Sarah Martinez stood with her new daughter beside a memorial to the original colony. The names of 2.3 million victims were carved in black stone, including that of her first daughter, Emma. "Mom, why is this memorial so important?" asked the 5-year-old girl she had adopted from Earth. Sarah looked at the inscription below the names. "They sought to extinguish our light. Instead, they learned why we are called dragons among the stars. Because sometimes, sweetheart, people need to understand that there are consequences for hurting others, and humans will always protect their families no matter what it costs." In the depths of space, human colonies continued to grow and flourish, but now they were protected by the knowledge that their peaceful nature was a choice, not a weakness. The dragons had gone back to sleep, but the galaxy would never forget they existed. And in the ruins of Kthari space, the few survivors told their children a warning that would be passed down through generations. Never threaten the humans young. When dragons wake, worlds burn.